You are totally good. Technically, that's a yes to that. Yeah, yes, yes, I did. Yes, thank you.
So now I've just been eating more because I feel like I
Because I've been eating more.
terrible.
You feel like you actually have to get to a point where then when you lose weight, you're like, no, I did. I actually did that. No, I really did. You're good, sir. Yeah, my wife is over there. And then my mother. They're making me
I didn't want to bring it in a great big one. What up?
Average stage. Such a class.
It's all good. It's all good. I may have actually liked just because it's a bunch.
I'm kind of just waiting for them to finish as well, so then they can sit down.
Yep.
Is that okay? In the meantime, I will figure out how to reposition my Windows toolbar. Tricky way to portion of it.
I only have 90 slides, so like.
You're making me nervous. Each slide gets 30 seconds, dude. It's like this. It doesn't come easy to get along.
So when I shared it with you, I was like, maybe I should have told her that it was 90 slides. And I was like, I think I did.
No, you did.
You did.
That's why I think my next comment was, and it's 25 minutes, right? 90 slides in 25 minutes.
The nice thing is, I'm really just going to talk
A
about
lot.
like, yeah. It's more like I wanted the visual of what it was, so people could see it, because I'm not going to spend a lot of time on literature.
Right. Well, the majority of people haven't read it. I mean, haven't read papers.
Right. And again, we could spend 2 hours just talking about the surface of what's here and how it works. And
Oh, absolutely.
all of that stuff.
Who's saying the prayer?
Pastor Chris.
Pastor Chris.
Chris.
Okay.
Yep.
It's funny. I used to have a pastor. It's spelled twice, though, right?
Yeah.
I used to have a pastor. At all. I actually don't like public teaching. We won't go into that.
So I think before I actually get into the actual study, it's more or less just me thinking.
So who did? So that's what I was going to ask you. So I usually have you introduce your family, close friends. Is that how we're going to go without?
We can do that.
Because if we have everybody introduce themselves, then I think we'll Ask Donna's is here, communications, is that right?
No, they're research. Yes. Donna, Dr. Allen, it's your research class, correct?
It is my
Communication research class, yes.
You get extra credit for every question they ask.
Hey, I will
Especially if they stump.
I'll tell you right now. Let me just preface that off the beginning. I make no claims to. No, I can't even do that because my chair is sitting in the room, and everybody else.
Wrong spot. And it's just
Yes,
not working.
expert. Yes.
There's a phrase that he's practiced well that says, "It's a good question."
I have practiced that only because I feel like it might actually be beyond the scope of my research. And because if you want to ask me the question of how many times I revised the study, you're more than welcome to ask me that question. I will tell you after we're done. It was lots of fun. Even so much as like, was it 4 weeks ago? But yeah, sorry, it's fine. It never dies. It lives. It lives forever. It is, I know, right?
We have some people on. All right, I think we're ready. Thank you for joining us this morning for Jessie Buchholz' dissertation defense. This is an exciting day, and it's wonderful to have a full room. So I appreciate you being here today. I wanted to first go over kind of what the next couple hours is going to look like for you as well as Jessie, and then we'll turn it over to Jessie for what's most important today, which is his. So first, we will introduce the committee that's been serving and working with Jessie over the last 2 years, and then have him have the opportunity to introduce some of his family as well as close friends that are in the room today. We're going to then open up with a prayer from Pastor Christ, and then turn it over to Jessie again for about a 25-minute presentation on what he's been doing for the last 2 years. After that, we will open it up for question and answer. First, we will have the committee first ask questions, and then after the committee feels like they have all of the answers from the questions that we've asked, we'll turn it over to the audience. So any questions that any of you have or comments that you want to share with Jessie. First, I want to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Bethany Studebaker, and I'm an assistant professor here at Northwest Nazarene University. I've had truly the pleasure of working with Jessie over the last 22 months. I remember one of the first conversations Jessie had in my office. I said, Bethany, how can I balance all of this? I'm a grad student, I'm a full-time employee, I'm a parent, I'm a friend, I'm a husband. And I remember looking at him and said, you don't. You just figure out what you're going to be really good at this week, and then you switch it up the next week. And so we've spent a lot of conversations over the last 22 months really saying, hey, what are you being really good at this week? Okay, next week?
And not so much.
We got to switch that up. Yeah. But truly, study, and what began as a really good study, I think is finished in a phenomenal study. And so Jessie was expressing a couple minutes ago about just the changes that have occurred just in the last 4 weeks, but truly the changes that have occurred in the last 24 months. And so it's been a very wonderful journey. And so I'm happy to be with you today, Jessie.
Thank you.
So I'll let the other committee members introduce themselves.
Well, I'm Mary Ellen Nurse, and I am from the Idaho Department of Correction.
Curtis Garner from the Department of Counselor Education.
Do you want to introduce some of your family and friends?
Yes. I'm going to start over here, and we'll kind of make a cool semicircle around. So these wonderful people here, I work with pretty much on a very regular basis. So it's Crystal Nielsen, Drew. I know I was going to say it right? And then Shanae Lloyd. They are just a wonderful group of people that I get to spend a lot of time with. Dr. Eric Keller is my boss and friend and mentor and all kinds of different things. Spent a number of years working with him as well. Oh, just a wonderful, wonderful person. Thank you guys for being here. Cameron Ventura is a dear friend, a wonderful videographer and human. And just I'm excited to have you here. Dr. Amy Rice. Not a doctor yet. Also, I have a pleasure of working with her in the library and just as part of my job. Dr. Curtis, the department chair of graduate education, a phenomenal person, wonderful qualitative researcher. I have learned so much. Dr. Zamora a wonderful friend. He's been in my cohort and have just grown to just love him as a person and everything that he has just brought out to me. Dr. Dre. And again, Dre and I started at NNU at the same time and has been literally a wonderful friend, a great person to bounce ideas off of, and just come into my office and be like, how are you doing? Like, are you living? Are you surviving? What's going on? Jason Morse is back there, a wonderful friend as well. Thank you for being here. My wonderful pastor, Chris Wild, NNU alum, probably one of the best humans that I know. I aspire to have half of what it is that he has, and he's my hero. Another wonderful friend. When I started going to Capital Christian, and we've just been friends ever since. So I appreciate you. Thank you for being here. I do not know your wife's name, so I apologize. Stacy. I met Joe kind of on this journey and has been just a wonderful person to bounce ideas off of. A lot of what you will see today is his, and I'm not supposed to tell you that, but now that you're in the room, I can tell you that, and you'll know what that is when you see it. Dr. Sharon Bull, who is my office companion. I have loved spending the last year with an office next to her, and I've learned just so much about so many things that I had no idea about as far as leadership and all of those things. My father and mother-in-law, so Bob and Kathy Tomlinson, I have for being here. It has been a privilege and an honor. Haven't even got to the hard part yet, folks. Like, this is, right? Welcome to 2 years of just holding lots of stuff back. I'm going to swing back. Dr. Allen, thank you so much for being here and bringing your class. Guys, I hope that this is enlightening, right? I wish you all the best on your journey. I can tell you that being on the other side of the table, I sat where you're sitting not very long ago. So it is amazing. My 3-year-old who's hiding under the table, she's going to pretend that she's shy, is amazing. And she really, and you'll see in a minute, has gotten me through a lot of this. This is my mom, Wanda Warner, who is, I am the way that I am today. The good, okay? just the good. The bad is all me. Oh, the stories that I could tell you right now, that would just be inappropriate. But literally, that we have had over the last 2 years and the encouragement that you've given me has been just overwhelming. So thank you so very much. I'm really going to try hard not to cry through this one. I may have to turn over here to actually talk to you, so please don't be offended. This is my beautiful wife, Kristen. This is not a solo mission. And it is a complete family ordeal. Could not have done it without her. There are not enough words to express how grateful I am for you. So thank you. Because I have 90 slides. I just told you how many, so don't count them as we go because they're going to go fast. Pastor Chris, would you please give me the honor of opening us up in prayer?
Passion, his dedication, bless his mind, bless his heart. So let him bless his preparation, for his strength. Thank you for his sufficiency. So from beginning to end, the presence is with him. Grace is in him. So everyone in this room.
Amen. Thank you so very much. All right, are you ready? Buckle up, Buttercup. We're gonna. Okay, so my study is a mixed method study looking at the impact of technology on their resilience, their mindset, and their self-efficacy. I saw this, and this image has kind of been a staple for my study, and it's the path of most resistance, right? If anybody ever been hiking or rock climbing, you understand what I'm talking about, right? You see something in front of you and it's a journey, and you have this moment, this hesitation that you feel where you're looking at this task that you're about to embark on and going, can I really do this? This looks dangerous, this is exciting but scary all at the same time, right? It's like a Disney movie wrapped up in your whole life. And it's one of those wonderful moments. And so for me, there are two things that really have solidified for me the ability for me to walk this journey. The first one is my family, my friends, and which again I'll talk about in a second. The other one is a verse from 1 Chronicles, and I want to share it with you. It's 1 Chronicles 28:20. Solomon his son, be strong and courageous, and do it. It says, do not be afraid and do not be dismayed, for the Lord God, even my God, is with you. I'll forsake you until all the work of the house of the Lord is finished. I can tell you that has been a rock in which I have clung to many times that probably God is not even there. He is, but I feel like he's not there. It has been very much a refuge and a strong tower. So I want to pass that on to you as something that as you go out and you do your own journeys, it's just something to keep in the back of your mind, right? Because courage is not necessarily moving forward through the path of least resistance. It's moving forward through the path of, and that's how we grow and that's how we become better. Just a little bit about me. So where I started, I know I was cuter when I was a baby. I would tell you that it's just age, but it may be something other than that. But that I had when I was little, and it is interesting to stand before you now at what I'll call like the precipice of this dream goal that you have in life, right? And when you are close to attaining it, it's a very surreal feeling. And so that's where I am with this one today. So been a number of people that have helped me along the way. This is a picture of my cohort. I owe them an immeasurable amount. I have learned so much from each and every one of them, all of their studies, the time that we've spent in class over the last 22 months. It has been a ride. They are amazing. Some of them are in this room. Thank you, Alex, for being here. I appreciate you. And it is just, those of you that are in class, your classmates are really, they are tremendous people, and you'll learn so much from them. Friends and my family. These are just pictures. As you can see, my sister and my brother-in-law over here, my other brother-in-law, my sister and brother-in-law and their family. These people are my strength, wholeheartedly. When I started 22 months ago, this was my family. As you can see, I am not the best looking one out of them, and I'm totally okay with that. That's probably a good thing, actually. I have all girls, so yeah, there's not a lot of testosterone in my family. It's really amazing. But I can tell you that as we have gone through this process, I've watched them change, and in that I have changed as well. And it's been a wonderful process. So we get to today, right? As you can see, we're all a little older, a little wiser, but nevertheless they are, and I am indelibly for them. This is a funny part. So I will tell you that there are moments where I felt like I didn't want to go on, where I was just like, this is too tough. I can't balance all this. And we would have moments like this. Okay, so we would have dance parties, and she would come in the office and she would tell me, she's like, Daddy, you need to play the hand clap song. And so I would have to stop whatever it was that I was doing and play this song for her. And so Everly, I'm so thankful for you. Last but never least, I could never have done it without you. Okay. Now for the reason why you're all here. You didn't come to watch me gush over my family, right, or my friends, or all of you that are in this room. There's way too much emotion in here right now. I'm so sorry. That was totally my fault. I promised myself that I wouldn't cry. I failed. So my connection to the study is one that I feel is just a total blessing. So a number of years ago, when I was first started at ANU, when I was working with Dr. Keller, we had an opportunity to work on what was called the KA in Idaho project. And it was a pilot that we ran over the entire state. It was a huge pilot where we introduced Khan Academy into schools across the state of Idaho. One of those schools was within the Department of Corrections, which I had no idea there was a school in corrections. I had no idea, right? I was literally just oblivious to this whole thing. It was through that process, and it was through that experience and through my time spent in prison, because I went to prison, which was very interesting to tell people I was going to prison, because they give you this weird look when you say I'm going to prison, like you're actually going not to visit, but to stay. And then when you tell them, it's very weird. But it is an absolutely amazing place, I will tell you. And it's weird to say about prison, right, that it's an amazing place, because your thought is it's not amazing. It can't be amazing. It's like dark and dreary and depressing, and there's people there that you wouldn't really want to meet. But study, you'll see things in the light that I was able to actually see them in. Also, study actually was birthed in that place. So you can kind of say that I've been pregnant since like 2014, right? Which is weird to say. And so let me explain, okay? It's as close to I can ever understand or assume what pregnancy feels like. You are carrying this thing with you for a very long time, and you're nurturing it, and it's sucking all the life out of you, and it literally is like keeping you up at night, and it's all you think about, and you're wondering if it's going to be successful or not when it gets older. And so it really is. It's just so really that is where this came from. And in all honesty, it speaks to something that I will talk to a little bit later about bias and what it is that I had to do to kind of bracket that bias and help myself to remove from this entire process. But that's where it started. And so that facility where some of these interviews took place that kind of formed the foundation of my study, I named Facility C. Now I can't tell you where that is, but clearly you know kind of a general idea right now of where it is. And then my further kind of connection was a colleague of mine, Eric Worth, Dr. Eric Worth, and I wrote a grant application for what was called the Second Chance Act. And we were hoping to bring higher education into the Department of Corrections here in the state of Idaho. That was my thought of prison, right? Shawshank Redemption, right? Right? Okay, so you're understanding, right? So you're going with me. Thank you for that. It was very depressing. I was thinking of it like as green walls and just drab and dreary, and it's like the worst place on earth. But what I found is that prison really doesn't look like that, right? There is a lot of hope and life and wonderful programs and amazing educators and people that are in there, and it totally transformed the way that I looked at this thing that I didn't quite understand. So the purpose of my study was there are 2 million incarcerated individuals within the United States at any given moment in time every year. Jails or correctional facilities or prisons. So 2 million people. And of those 2 million people, about 700,000 of them are paroled each year. So you have this huge revolving door of people that are coming and going. And look at why. I wanted to look at impact. I wanted to see what it was that was really making a difference. Because if we don't make a difference, this population there's a crucial point here where there's a tipping point. And I wanted to really look at and say, what is this? What is this? What is this? What does it mean? And so the study really was to investigate the impact of technology on an offender's mindset, self-efficacy, and resilience, and to investigate this lived experience, right? This phenomenon that encompasses the life of an offender when they're placed in correctional education and they have these different experiences with technology and how that just propels them. It changes their trajectory in life. So my significance of my study is basically kind of twofold. So the first one is that correctional education has been recognized as a catalyst. So it's been recognized as something that offenders, people that are in prison, these students, to a better life. However, necessarily do is it doesn't necessarily look at qualities, right? We can make external qualities. I can show you academic scores. I can make you a proficient reader, right? We can do all of these things, but it's the internal changes on the inside that really are impactful, right? That we can change a person's actual place in life and where they're going to go by fostering these better qualities. And so the research in these areas was lacking, right? There was data on its effectiveness for correctional education, but there wasn't really anything on the understanding of this impact of self-efficacy, of a mindset, of this shift in who I was and what I was into where it is that I want to go and who it is that I want to be. My study provides a window, right, into what this looks like. But it's a window into this phenomenon, into these lived experiences, into this impact that technology can have on these internal characteristics, or we'll kind of flesh them out a little bit and call them implicit theories or internal theories. A little bit about the literature review. So my study was framed, and it kind of looks like this. I felt this graphic was really pivotal because if you know anything about construction and building a house, you have to have a good foundation, you have to have good walls to support that structure, and then the roof kind of like caps everything off, and that's really what it is that solidifies what it is that you're trying to build. Right, so as we're looking at a reconstituted correctional student or a person who has been rehabilitated, who has really changed and is making a better way for themselves, you need some of these things. And so we need to have an understanding of this technology, right? So this content knowledge. And research has said that a student, to really gain a really good understanding of how technology impacts them, what makes it applicable, how I can use it in a classroom and in my life, both personally and professionally, it needs to be modeled for them. Teachers, the educators that are in these classrooms need to have a firm foundation of what that looks like. And so for that, I use the model of TPACK, which is technology, pedagogy, and content knowledge. And so how that works in an educator's realm, translate that into their students. Another thing is this concept of self-efficacy. Anybody know who Albert Bandura is? Okay, like the 5 of you that I figured would know who Albert Bandura is. Okay, so I don't have much of a history lesson for you, unfortunately. Albert Bandura is the father, okay, old school father, of this concept of self-efficacy. And what it basically means is you're looking at these things that influence you, right? So these performance outcomes, both positive and negative, how you perform when you go into something, whether you fail or you succeed, has an impact on how you perceive yourself, okay? These vicarious experiences, so the things that somebody else is doing and how that affects you, impact on you. If I see someone that is doing a task and they're succeeding at it, did that as well. Another thing is this verbal persuasion. So it's encouraged by encouragement or discouragement, and we know that. If someone encourages you, makes you feel good about who you are. And if you are discouraged, if they tell you that you're not good at something, you start to believe that. This physiological feedback. This for me is a very high stress situation. And because of that, your body has these reactions. It's called fear, hesitation, or whatever it is. When you come up to those things, having the ability to say, I can do this. I can push through this. I can move beyond where it is that I am right now based on factors. Okay, so that's super general about self-efficacy. Another one is the concept of resilience. Now, I'm not going to go over all of the outside bubbles. I know you would be really excited about learning about resilience in that context. But the concept of resilience is this understanding that it's these internal motivators, right? It's this ability to persevere. It's this ability to come up against something and say, I can push through this. I know that I can. I have this desire, this willpower, if you will, to be able to do that. Think of it this way. If self-efficacy is this side of a coin, resilience is the other side of that coin, right? Okay. Also, another part of the literature review was looking at what adult education looks like. So this is the average adjusted cohort rate, graduation rate for four-year students, 2012 to 2013. So as you can see, Idaho doesn't have a score listed. I know, right? You're like, oh, thanks, Idaho, for not being noted. Good for you. But what this says, what it really says is that so 80% of the students who start at a freshman year graduate 4 years later. That started 4 years earlier graduated. So 80%. Well, what happens is that other 20%, where do they go? They become the population in which we're talking about. These adult people who are needing to be educated. So we're talking about adult basic education or adult education. And there's various places that they end up, right? And there's various reasons why category. But that was just a snapshot to understand that there is a lot of people, this is a huge percentage of the population of our country that fall into this demographic. The concept of the literature review was technology, not just in education, but technology use for adults. Because as adults, we have lived experiences that we've had, and they shape what it is that we do and who we are and what we feel and where we react, right, and all of those things. And so with technology and this onset of technology, it was crucial for me to figure out and to research what it looks like from that perspective. Interact with current technology. Because my 3-year-old can work an iPad like nobody else, and she can lock that thing, and I'm like, how did you do that? And she loves emojis, which are awesome because it's kind of like hieroglyphics in a way, right? Where we really are. We're communicating like the Egyptians did. It's awesome. That's for a whole other study, right? That's outside the scope of this study. But it was crucial for me to look at that concept. And another one was correctional education as a whole. Now, I need to provide you with just a little bit of history so that you have a better understanding of where we're going. So corrections started in 1789. Excuse my dates, with the Walnut Street Jail, where that was the birth of corrections. Correctional education, however, did not start until 1798. So there's my 8. Okay, and correctional education was started to make offenders literate so that they could read the Bible, right? Because that was what was perceived as the motivating factor. If we can change people by giving them the Word of God and they can understand it, it will change them. And so that was the birth of correctional education. Well, that changed a little bit. And so there were 3 kind of prevalent models that came out of that time. The first one was called the Auburn Plan. The Auburn Plan basically stated that there was a correctional facility and we were going to segregate them. For the most part, they were going to be in solitary confinement until they were doing something collective, right? They were getting together collectively. The first plan. That gave birth to what's called the Pennsylvania model, which was we separate everybody all the time. They're segregated all the time, 24 hours a day. There's no rehabilitation. They're offenders. How dare you? You don't deserve anything. Figure out what you did wrong, stew on it, and you're going to be good. You're changed from that. If only discipline in my house was that effective, right? You go to your room, you stay there. You'll be better when you get out. And the last one was called the Elmira model. Now, the Elmira model was created by a gentleman named Zebulon Brockway. I'm totally going to name him Zebulon because when you have a name like that, you know that you were going to do something amazing in life, right? That's like a name worth noting. Babe, just take it. Sorry. Okay, and what he did was he actually went to the local colleges around the Elmira Reformatory and said, I want you to come in and I want you to actually start to educate educate them, and he treated them like they had a purpose and they needed something more than what it was that they were currently given or was currently offered at that time. And so think of it like that, right? You have this kind of modern understanding or birth of what we kind of now have as correctional education. There was a seminal study that was done by the RAND group, and it showcased an understanding that correctional education has an impact on offenders. Will actually have a 43% reduction in what's called recidivism within 3 years. So that means that they will not, 43% of them will not come back. Okay, that's huge. I could get into all the financial aspects of what that saves, but we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars nationally. That's not even just the state savings and everything else like that. But started to become also, correctional education has been proven to have a really good impact on an offender when they come out of a facility on the wage they can receive, right? Because studies have proven and research has shown that if you get out of a prison and you go right back into the same demographic you were before, the chances are pretty good that you're gonna end up back. I once heard it, and it was said very tongue-in-cheek by a correctional educator, was when we say goodbye to our students, see them back, right? We're hoping that we don't see them back. When they come back to the door, you're like, oh, hi, right? They're almost deflating in a way. Conversely related to what a regular educator feels, because they leave, they come back, like, hi, it's nice to see you again. So it really touched me in a way. Another way the research kind of formulated in the literature review, I looked at what's called the Rider program. So it's an alternative sentencing program that we have here in the state of Idaho, and they do have in other states as well. But it allows a judge to basically have a person, instead of them going directly to prison, go into like a therapeutic program, a program to help them, a program to help them get educated, to deal with substance abuse issues, right, or anything else like that, to receive counseling. And so the state of Idaho has 3 different, and so the bulk of my research, the quantitative data that I collected, was done in those 2 facilities. I'll touch on that in a moment. Research questions that went around my study. The first one was, how does technology afford or limit offender mindset in the correctional education classroom? The hypothesis was that it wasn't going to have an effect, and the alternative was that it was. The second question dealt with resilience. Does technology actually increase or help create this sense of resiliency, or build the sense of resiliency within correctional education students? And the last question was dealing with self-efficacy. So in the same light, how does this technology affect? So does it have an impact, or does it not have an impact? My theoretical framework. So research on fixed and growth mindset was pivotal for me. And I wanted to use it as my foundation because it really is very rich in this understanding that there are 2 kinds of mindsets that we have internally. We have a fixed mindset, which means that we are born with all of the information we will ever have, all of the concept, all of the ability we will ever have. We will only be as good as that. Mindset say, well, I was born with something, right? I can grow that through adversity, I can grow that through tribulation, I can grow that through all kinds of different things. And so we individually have a fixed or growth mindset all the time when it comes to everything in life. More on the positive side, some things were more on the fixed side, but no matter what, you can always go into or grow into. And so that was what I used as my foundation, my theoretical framework. Research design. I was really excited about this, actually. When I started conducting research, I was very scared. And I'll be honest with you, I did not know that I was a researcher in foreign territory, right? The last math class that I took was like in 2003 when I was an undergrad. This was a little scary for me, but I was so excited to step into this. So I found a design that I really liked. So it is a descriptive mixed methods phenomenological qualitative dominant approach. Say that 3 times fast on Sunday. Wow, right? I literally spent a whole day just reading what that actually meant so I could make sure that it really was the research design that I wanted to use. But it's amazing. So what it's basically saying is we're taking these lived experiences, these interviews, and they are going to be the foundation, this thing that we are going to then build everything around to support, right? We're going to really find out, does what they say actually have merit? Data. Because as those of you that are in research know, I can say it all day, but if I can support it with data, it really does make a difference. And then people look at you like, you know what you're talking about. That's really good because you have data. Qualitative phenomenological interviews, questions. The quantitative survey that I created, or excuse me, I adapted, and self-efficacy also encompassed all of the 3 research questions, and that was the word I was looking for, was distributed by hand to both of the writer program facilities. So there was an A facility and there was a B facility. What was distributed by hand, if you don't know, is that correctional facilities don't necessarily have internet for their offenders. So an electronic survey was not an option, which I feel honestly was better for this study because I actually got to meet face-to-face and have conversations and really talk to the people who were involved in my study. This is just a really good breakdown of the gender for the different participants. As you can see, there were 74 males. There were 23 females. There were a couple of people that when they gave them a survey, they decided they didn't want to tell me what gender they were, which is okay. When identifying, that's fine. Another breakdown here is ethnicity. So you can see that 70% of the people that took the survey were white, but there was another component of ethnicity. So there were people that were Hispanic. I had a couple of African American, a couple of Native American, and some other ethnicities that were in there as well. It's a breakdown of the interview participants. As you can see, I didn't actually give them real names. Those are pseudonyms. There is no correlation, if you know anything about Reservoir Dogs, to the names that I use. Those of you that know it, yeah, it's probably not a good reference to use, but I just wanted to throw that out there. I started writing them and was like, oh, movie. Yeah. Okay. Also, as you can see here, I wanted to note that there were 2 of the interview participants that were not only offender students, but they were actually TAs, so they were tutors in those classrooms as well. So they had a different perspective that they were able to bring to the study.
Here with adult basic education, we encounter people from all different learning levels. It's not a 7th grade class or 12th grade class. So a tool like this is great to accommodate that diverse setting that we encounter here down at the school.
The participants were people who were either currently enrolled in correctional education or had previously been enrolled and received a GED or a high school diploma equivalency within the correctional education facilities. I had 108 offenders that I had surveys for. 100 of them I was actually able to use. And of those, there was one that handed me his survey, and at the top, filled the whole thing out. It was wonderful. I was so excited. It was like my 3rd survey that I'd collected. And handed it to me. Before he handed it to me, he circled the little bubble that said, "Do not wish to participate," and handed it to me. And I said, so technically I had a 99 surveys, but it was 93% completion rate. And then there were 5 participants for the interviews. I know you're all so excited about, right? All this wonderful data. So the qualitative piece, again, there were 5 participants. I used the quantitative, again, as a frame to support and find validity within what was found within the interviews. Based on a Likert scale, so there were 3 subsections, there were 3 sections, one about mindset, one about self-efficacy, and one about resilience. And then within the mindset, there were subsections of questions. It was a very long survey, it was very deep, and I heard a few comments about that afterwards. So the qualitative interviews were transcribed. And you can ask me about that if you want to later, because it was a lot of fun. And so the first tier, there were 23 codes, which were then categorized into the second tier, which were 15 codes, which were then broken down into 4 main themes. Those are the 4 main themes. The 4th theme actually came out of all of the interview data that was collected, which was really, really exciting. I didn't coming out, but it did, and I felt like it was just so prevalent that it needed to be addressed. And then the quantitative data, I analyzed it 3 different ways. I was using a dependent or paired t-test, which is a parametric test, and that parametric test basically make an assumption about the parameters, or what's like the defining proportions of the population's distribution. So it's taking it and kind of saying, you know, is it normally distributed? Is it not? What does that kind of look like? The 2 different groups of scores were from the same group. So there's a pre-test and a post-test that was given to the same. And so that's why the dependent t-test or the paired t-test worked the best. I was able to focus on the difference between the scores, so the pre-test score and the post-test score. And then for this, the p-value was equal to or less than 5% for statistical significance. I also used the Wilcoxon signed rank test, which was my non-parametric alternative, right? So parametric kind of has regulations, if you will. Non-parametric says, well, what does it look like if there isn't a distribution, right? What does it look like if it's just an open kind of a sample? It makes no assumptions about it. And I use that to kind of counterbalance, right? So if I had a t-test on one hand, the Wilcoxon was on the other, and so I was looking to see if my data was going to be able to be balanced on both sides. Does it say the same thing on one side that it says on the other? And with the Wilcoxon, you have z-scores, so the threshold score was a z of greater than 1.984. And again, Wilcoxon looks for magnitude and direction, so it's looking this direction. I looked at effect size as well. So the effect size is the relative position of one group to another. So the group of pre-test versus the group of post-test, and how much overlap do they have? Is it a lot? Is it a little? And again, the lower the effect size means that there's less overlap and difference, so they're almost identical. And then with a large effect size, there's a greater, excuse me, vice versa. Let me scratch that, reverse what I just said, okay? Lower effect size means the group is almost the same. Sorry, I was totally contradicting myself as I was reading. And then the higher effect size means less, so the group is more spread out, so there's more growth. Of there's 5 subsections. So the first one, 3 out of the 4 questions were found to be significant. Of the learning goals subsection, so that was theory of intelligence. The one about learning had all of the questions were found to be significant. This idea of effort, there was all the questions were found to be significant or show significance. Performance goal subsection that had 2 of the 3 were not shown. The last one, which was these avoidance goals, where all of the questions did not show significance. So out of these 5 subsections, okay, 3 of the 5 subsections, or 60% of them, were shown that they're to show significance. So we found significance in those subsections. So therefore, I was able to reject the null hypothesis and accept the alternative that technology does have, or a perceived impact on mindset. Piece. So as you can see here, here's my major theme, and then there were codes, there were sub-themes that were indicated inside of there. So as I took all of those random codes and put them together, those then made up those sub-themes. So they were all part of that larger theme. One of the comments that was made by a participant, he said, well, for me, it's been a great help because it's technology, it's helped me. I'm using it for the self-paced aspect, helps me as I slowly go through, and I'm able to learn on an individual basis at my own speed. Down, I can actually see what's being done on the video and go from there. Here for me, and I can pick it up really quick.
had forgotten a lot of math. I had some head injuries and so forth. A lot of that was forgotten, but I have a tendency to learn very quickly. So I get bored easy. So the nice thing is I'm able to continue to pick up as I'm going at the pace that I like to go at. I'm really enjoying it. Right now I'm doing fractional exponents and so forth in algebra, and it just, yesterday I had to leave a little early for another appointment. I was frustrated, but I'm just getting this, you know, and I wanted to continue to work, but you know, I had to go over for the other appointment to get back to the computer this morning to start back on it and see if I had actually figured it out, and I did. I was pretty excited about being able to do that.
From the second question that dealt with resilience, the quantitative methods. So again, there was this hypothetical scenario about you as a student. You took an exam, you thought you did really well on it, you got your score back, you found out that you failed it. Feel now, based on the effort you put in and the score that you received, what does that make you feel? And those questions were all gathered around this hypothetical situation. And what I found, the data showed, was that 4 out of these 7 questions did not show any significant difference. So basically, I had to, at that point, accept the null hypothesis that technology does not necessarily have an effect on offender resilience. However, quantitative methods that were from the interviews, a significantly different picture. However, I still, based on the data, had to accept that null hypothesis. It was pivotal for you to see that there was something that was there that could, for future research, garner some deeper looking into and a different adaptation possibly of those particular questions. But Mr. White says, the reason I want to learn is because all my life I pretty much just pushed learning away. Once I actually think about it, I'd much rather go back through high school or something so I could learn everything that I possibly could, because knowledge is power. Such a powerful statement. Knowledge is power. And once you learn that, you understand it. And it was way easier to learn back then than it is now. I have to go over everything a lot more times anyways.
Reason Colin's making it fun. I haven't got discouraged yet or anything. I mean, there's a couple times where I just get away, but most of the time I don't. I just keep learning. And with the textbook, that's all I want to do is push it away and shut it. I have one in my room and I still never use it. But with Colin, I want to come back every day, sometimes stay extra hours and do math. I don't know why. I don't like sitting on a computer most of the time, but fun.
The last research question that dealt with self-efficacy. There was 3 different subsections that were developed out of Peter Muris's self-efficacy survey that he had created. One dealt with academic, one dealt with social, and one dealt with emotional self-efficacy. So out of the 16 different questions that were used on the survey and able to be analyzed, 15 out of the 16 and revealed a significant difference. So at that point, I was able to accept my alternative hypothesis that technology does in fact have a perceived impact on self-efficacy or offender self-efficacy. The qualitative, again, there was a theme that went along with that with these supporting codes. Some really amazing things that came out of this part. So Mr. James says, tomorrow looks like, he's like, I don't know. There's like a lot of hope, I guess. I don't know. He's like, I mean, I have dreams, you know, and I want to see them succeed. You know, being in the education department in prison has given me all the tools to help me succeed, and I hope that I can prove that.
I have dreams, you know, and I want to succeed at them, you know, and this con, being in the education department here at the prison, has given me all the tools and I hope to prove that I can. I've been incarcerated for almost 19 years, and so I haven't been there, you know, for a very long time. I think it's kind of preparing me for how things will be instructed when I get back to college. My hope is that I'll be, you know, that I'll be paroled in a year and a half, and I would like to finish up with school. I've got 2 years pretty much completed. Now it's just a matter of just getting all the stuff that's done at the school, done.
We all down here at the school believe education is one of the biggest factors in whether someone's going to come back here or not. So we try to pay a lot of attention to that. So anything we can do to enhance the education and probability of success for people not to come back here is huge. So I think it's really helped with that in that setting, in everything. You know, people, the confidence to learn. We have students coming down here now. They probably wouldn't have envisioned spending their prison time learning math or going down to learn math. And now all of a sudden, crossed with this path of this Khan Academy, and all of a sudden they're doing something they never expected before. They're excited. I want to go down and learn some math. Can I stay an extra hour and learn math? And it's great. That's something I don't think would have necessarily happened without the Khan Academy. For me now, doesn't look anything like what the tomorrow was before I started learning. I think my confidence level was pretty low. I think anybody's confidence level is pretty low when they come in here. If not, it's probably something you should look at. But mine was pretty low. And a moment in schooling a long time ago where I was doing pretty good, and then I departed from that. And I took some time and kind of old part of me and realized it didn't go anywhere. It was just lying there. So, you know, I got to kind of reignite that learning, and it started building confidence in me. And I mean, where I'm at math now, I never, if you would have told me 2 years ago that you're going to be doing this kind of math, I never would have bought it. And now I've even kind of, you know, maybe I want to get a minor in math because I find it so fun and interesting to learn. So the confidence thing is huge for me because I never would have even come up with long-term goals the kind I do now, because the kind I have now, they're ambitious goals, and now I have the confidence that I really believe I can go out and achieve them. So I think the confidence has been the biggest thing for me.
Last theme kind of came out again, as I said, from the interview footage and those collected interviews. And it was this concept of really looking at technology, academics, and success. So as you just heard from that offender, there's this confidence, and it's led me to this ability to have success. And what does that look like? Not just for me, but for my family, right? What does that look like for everything and every person that is around me? Again, there's so many quotes that came out of this part of the study. But it was truly, truly impactful, this concept of success and what that feels like. I'll share that one later. Sorry, time's sake, right? Got to keep going. Okay, so recommendations. The future of this research, again, while this one focused on the impact of technology on mindset, resilience, and self-efficacy, I would really like to see this continue and go further, figuring out what else is there, what other cognitive and non-cognitive factors, internal motivators, all of those pieces that are there. Also looking at this pre and post-test design that was given at the same time, breaking that up, looking at it now from in one area, then waiting a time, and then coming back and looking at that again to see really what that looks like, having a larger female population to look at to really get almost a weighted demographic or something that's really close to the same, would I feel like be really, really helpful. Also with the incarcerated individuals, I didn't look at anyone that had not taken education classes. So looking at that as well, coming in and saying, what do you guys feel like, right? What are you feeling about who you are? Is anything impacting you? And then seeing the differences or the correlations between those things. Also looking at the educators, so the teachers that are in those classrooms and the perceptions that they have and the transformation that they've either had personally or they've seen in their classes. Which I really am excited about is this understanding of taking this and expanding this concept to include what I call this understanding of fortitude, which encompasses mindset, resilience, and self-efficacy, but also adds these other concepts about spirit, right? Endurance, character, courage, encompassing this into this theory of fortitude, and then coupling that with this concept from Kurt Lewin called this force field analysis, which basically means that we have patterns of behavior that are acted upon by forces, right? So something happens to you and that affects you. You might have a trajectory that's going straight up and down, and all of a sudden something comes in and now it shifts your trajectory a little bit. And so it's these constant forces. Also, it says force field, and I'm a Star Wars fan, and so that to me was like, oh, right, gotta look at this, because it's awesome. Implications for professional practice. Again, looking at the research, very little of it has been conducted on correctional offenders, especially in conjunction with mindset, self-efficacy, resilience, those pieces, looking at how long an educational program is and the effect on people. So that is crucial. And I feel like this adds to that and it builds into what that could be. Coming up with a better understanding, technology integration, and feeling like there has to be better development or training or something else that's there. Quality of the education that is there and how we can enhance that and make that better, not only for the educators, but for their students and the population that they serve. At the impact while they're in this housed facility. So what does it look like continuing? So when they're done with school, what does that look like? How does that impact them? What does it make them do? And then looking maybe longitudinally when they're out, how has that helped them or increased? All of this adds to that and just kind of helps, propel that concept forward to these additional therapeutic communities. I'm done.
Wonderful job, Jesse. I'm going to ask the committee if they have any questions. I'll turn it over to them.
So you want to take turns? Or?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that way we'll give him
Okay.
give him a little bit of a ride.
Okay, I have several.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. No problem. I know, because I talk long.
Okay, ready to go?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, Jesse, you used the term throughout your study, and I was wondering if there's a difference in how technology was defined in your review of literature as to how we define it correction, because technology can range from your artificial intelligence to a mechanical pencil.
Yes.
So
yes, no, it's very true.
Did you define technology? I was thinking that it is limited. It might be a delimiter, maybe.
Yes. So in the study, for that understanding was the concept of the computer-based education or something that's delivered via computers. So looking at it from that, you're absolutely right. Again, pencil and paper at one point in time was the threshold of modern technology. So it's not anything to say that definition couldn't be more reinforced, but that's where I was looking at it as from that frame of how do we engage students via this computerized understanding, very Khan Academy kind of a basis of you have a tool that is then providing content in an area that maybe an educator.
History is always a threat to the internal validity of any study.
Yes,
right?
sir.
So considering the historical context of the changes and challenges with the Idaho correctional facilities, why do you think the impact is upon the outcomes that you had in your, and did you do anything to try to control, or would you have tried to do anything to control for historical impact?
That's a great question. I think historically, of the people that were the Department of Corrections at the time when the study was taking place, and then those that were in charge during the initial interviews that were collected, I think that there was a sense that things needed to change, that there needed to be a vehicle, something that needed to be provided to move these offenders from the place they were to a place where they felt like they needed to be. And so there was almost a no holds barred understanding of we need to figure out what this is. We need to be able to really bring something to them that's going to make them and help them to be successful. And I think that perspective from the administrative level, I'm not sure if that actually ever really got down to the offenders themselves. I feel like those that I spoke to, both during the data collection phase and then through the interviews, I feel like it was a byproduct of that. But I almost want to go back and look at, and I think like that may be where that educator perspective is very crucial in the broad scope of what this looks like, because they would be the ones that not only would have the internal, like in the classroom, and what that historical perspective has done, either limiting or affording, right? So helping to either bridge gaps or make them larger. And then also looking at it from an administrative perspective, because there's a lot of the educators that have been there for numbers of years. And so they've seen changing of the guards, they've seen initiatives, they've seen all of these different types of, we got this, we're gonna make this better, we have all these different things, and then not a lot of changes happened. And I can say that not based on my own opinion, but based on conversations that I have had at tables where I've sat around and asked questions of, what do you think about this? When we first introduced Khan Academy, there was a lot of hesitation about, is this gonna be real? Like, is this really going to work? And I think that speaks to a historical understanding of things that have been tried, promises that had been made, and this understanding of looking at, here's a tool that's gonna change everything. I think we do that with technology sometimes. We tout it as this magic silver bullet that is going to fix all of our education problems. And when it's not done correctly, I think we've seen the inverse of that actually happen. Sure. I'm hoping I answered your question in a way, but I think again, it does. It has to have some impact. And I do feel like just with this study, it was just not within what it was I was looking at. But I do feel like that's something that, again, when you're looking at the teachers, would be there.
Well, question about your survey instrument there.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, if you were to replicate this study, how do you think you might check for internal validity of responses? I'm thinking of, maybe I'm not using the correct term. How would you check, or how might, what might be a strategy for you to check to make sure that the survey responses internally? Because
yes.
Sometimes in our setting, students have trouble reading.
Yes, ma'am. So what I did with this survey instrument in particular was I did what's called content validity with it, and I passed it out and sent it to all of the education directors for all of the different facilities. They looked at it, they were able to give me some feedback. From there, some questions were actually reformatted. Wording, like you had mentioned, that was a little ambiguous, and some of it may have been a little more difficult for those offenders to understand. I also feel like with that resiliency piece that I talked about before, that section, I feel like maybe that was another reason why there was growth in that section, because in the interviews, you were able to see that, right? You were able to feel that there was that concept of resilience was being fostered. It wasn't present. So that's, again, where I think going back and doing this again, looking at that resilience section for sure, and saying, okay, clearly there was something here that was not where it should have been, based just on the data that was collected. So what else can I find? Is there another form of resilience that I can use, or another aspect of the survey? Also, I think the length of the survey, almost overwhelming for some offenders at time. I had mentioned them, oh, there's only 22 questions, and they were like, hey, that's great. And then you got into it, and it's really 58 questions because there's all these other questions. And the first couple that I received back, especially from the first facility that I went to, the comment I got back was, yeah, there's not 22 questions, right? It says on the top, it's like, should take like 10 minutes. And I thought about reformatting that, and I said, no, to them that it can take some of them a little longer. but I feel like that too, maybe breaking it apart. And I know we've had conversations as a committee about this, and that's that concept of that study being so large in the beginning and trimming it down and slimming it down. And I've had conversations with Bethany, and I said, it's still really large. And maybe taking those apart and just looking at one at a time, individually, over time, better, would gather better data at that point.
I'd like to follow up on the idea of the, with the content validity. You were talking about something I needed some help understanding. You calculate a SCVI.
Yes.
And then establish the criterion of 0.90.
Yes.
For your content validity.
Yes.
Can you explain the process of
Sure.
what you did here? Because I was not familiar with calculating the SCVI
Yes.
or how you came up with it. And I don't know how you came up with the point.
Okay, so it was actually something that we learned during our summer session where we all got together as a cohort. And so what it is I sent a survey out with basically it was a Likert scale of is this question, do you feel comfortable with this question? Do you not feel comfortable with this question? And then if you don't, how could it be reformatted or
You
changed?
sent out to experts and asked them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And so then all of those came back, and it was ranked on a 1 to 4 scale.
Okay.
Basically 3 and 4 were used, and then if it was a 1 or a 2, it was then either reformatted or sent back and looked at. And so that 90% threshold, that 0.9% threshold, was basically on a spreadsheet, putting all of those responses down, looking at all of those individual questions, and then saying of the 8 experts that looked at this survey, how many of them said, right? And then looking at that, okay, so here are the questions, here's this, and then anything that was lower than that was either recalculated, reformatted, and then sent back, and then recalculated, so that all of those questions fell into that threshold.
Okay, so you did that for content validity.
Yes.
And then you also did an internal consistency kind of didn't you run Cronbox out?
Yes.
Okay.
On all the questions, yeah. And so I ran a Cronbox on the entire survey, and it on each of the individual subsections, and then on each of the individual questions. Because so I wanted to make sure that, yes, it may be as a whole and as a subsection, but do the questions themselves, are they actually valid? And that's where some of those I was able to remove. And that's why, so some of the sections didn't have actually all the questions as far as that were taken on the survey, but that was just because they didn't meet that criteria.
So
That was a great question, thank you.
Jesse, you spoke a little bit about this, but maybe more of a comment. So I know we talked a little bit about how that resilience piece was a surprise to us, because as you explained, that coin of, we've got self-efficacy and we've got resilience on the other side. But what else surprised you in this study besides that resilience piece?
This things. How much time do we want me to spend? Because we could talk all
Very
day.
much longer.
I know, right? Sorry, because you heard me talk for like an hour already. Honestly, some of the things that were the most surprising to me was the level of respect that was shown by the offenders. The level of respect they had for the staff that were in the classroom that were educating them. My understanding when I walked in was like, there's no way. This is going to be like the craziest room on the planet, right? I'm thinking about it like they're going to be like, there's going to be stuff on the walls. I'm going to be afraid for my life. Do I need to wear like a flak jacket, right? Do I need a gun? Like, do I have a taser? I'm literally, I was afraid. Feeling those fears being dispelled, you just walked in and were like, oh my gosh, I was so naive actually going on here. And it really, I think, spoke to my judgment as a person, because I walked into this going, I think I know how these people are. I think I know what this is. And being totally shattered and just broken, having to then rebuild my understanding, I think was probably one of, for me personally, it was. Another thing was the concepts of how willing they are to talk about things that they've done wrong and how much they want to change. And seeing that almost dichotomous relationship of, I understand I've made a mistake, and some of them have been pretty egregious. The desire that I have to want to be better. And I want something, and I really do want it. And even those that had left the facility and come back, right? So they've recidivated. I tried it once before. I really don't want to come back. You know, I really want to do something different with my life. I really want to be better. To feel that, felt like it could be, was probably just one of the most moving things. Yeah, there's a bunch of others. Excuse me, but those are probably the top.
Well, I've got several, but how much time do we have? I don't want to prolong, but Jesse, you conducted your research with rider population, which in our correctional world is, shall we say, a different category of offender than what we see in the GP general population. If you were to replicate this study, do you think your results might be different? Rider who they see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, ma'am.
Versus some of our offenders, like that one gentleman.
Yes.
19 years. I have some in my class, 20, 30 years.
Yes, ma'am. And I think that I would like to say that you would still see, hopefully, and again, and there's that bias, right, creeping back up in there. I would like to say, hopefully, you would see the same thing. You would see that growth, and you would see that. I would tell you though that it would probably be in a different understanding, because for them it is the rider population. You see that light, right? It's like, oh, 90 days, 120 days, 270 days. Like, I'm out of here. I can go back out. I can do this. I'll have my cell phone again. I heard somebody say one time. But it's for those gentlemen and ladies that are in general pop. I think that I don't think that you would see it as evident. Still have that deadline that's in front of them, right? They could be done with education and still have years in front of them. You might still see some of that growth, but I don't know that it would be as great as we saw with the rider population. And again, I think for that factor.
There's one more.
Oh, absolutely. No, you're fine.
Okay. Of course, you always want to be thinking ahead to what the next research is going to be that you're going to conduct.
My next dissertation, right, Dr. Pines?
Well, you collected quite a bit of demographic data. And any plans to use that? I'm thinking especially with the female population. Effect of parents, whether or not your parents graduated, is a big one. See any plans to take that demographic data and do some either qualitative or quantitative? I think you might have done something.
Yes, yeah, and that is my plan. Yes, ma'am. I knew that it was beyond the scope of my study, and Bethany and we had so many conversations. I was like, but I really want to, and she's like, you realize that you only have so many pages really that you should be filling. And so I did. I felt like, and that was, again, I kept hearkening back to our conversation that we had over the summer of it's very, very large, and there's lots of moving parts to this. And so I really had to focus myself in on just the main components, knowing that I have the ability to take that other information out and really start to delineate that, really look at all of those nuanced pieces of information. So yes, it is a plan, I hope, yes. Okay.
Did you do your facility C first, right?
Yeah, that was gathered first,
And
yes.
the qualitative questions that then you checked out with your quantitative.
Yes, sir.
So there was this fourth category. And I'm curious as to why you chose the three that you did, that you looked at with quantitative data, follow up with some quantitative with the fourth. What was your thinking?
It's a spectacular question. I looked at my survey and I went, can I even fit something like this in? Right? I looked at it and I was like, I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, that's 22 questions. No, really, it's 58 questions. And then I thought too, where do I fit that in? Right? So how do I bridge that into, because mindset, resilience, self-efficacy, they all kind of fit very nicely together. And I'm looking at success, it fits, but it's pieces, right, of each one of these in a way. If I made that survey instrument any larger, I'm going to probably have less of a response rate than I got originally, but I felt like it was just going to be, analyzing that was just going to be a monster. And again, I hearkened back to our conversation over the summer, and it was like, you have to lean some of this out at some point in time. But I felt like it needed to be in there because I felt like if I didn't bring it to light, that I was doing it a disservice based on the information that was collected.
I have no further questions.
No.
Put it up to anybody in the audience. I do know we have some people virtually, so virtually, if you have questions, feel free to pop on. Questions or comments from the audience, and Jesse, I'll let you facilitate those if
Okay.
you'd like.
Sure. Dr. Dre.
So Jesse, why do you feel like the difference existed between the quant and the qualitative data on resilience? Do you have any hypotheses?
My hypothesis is it was the hypothetical situation. I think that looked at it from an actual standpoint of a regular education classroom. The concept of what happened here would have a different effect on that population. You're dealing with a population, and Mary Ellen, please speak into this if you need to. You feel like you're dealing with a population that is already so low, has such a low understanding of their abilities, right? They're in prison. So to present them with a situation where they tried their hardest, they gave all of this effort and energy into it, and I feel like that triggers, that almost has an effect mentally, and it draws back all of these images, right, of these feelings. And so at that point, I feel like you're acting and answering more emotionally than you are realistically or cognitively to those sections. What I don't know for sure, but that's what I think was really one of the biggest factors of why that wasn't as successful or wasn't significant.
It's bad when you've got responses when they're taking the survey, but when you start talking to them, it seems like.
Wholeheartedly.
And this is curiosity. What did you have to go through to get them on camera?
Great. I didn't have to do that. Okay. So this is the perfect part. Through that Khan Academy pilot, they were able to and Sovereign, I will use that name because I can in this room, was able to go in and actually interview offenders at a specific facility. So all of that footage that you saw, the actual footage of them, they created. They were the ones that went in and actually had the interview protocol and looked at those offenders and were able to talk to them and all of that. And then they were able to compile all of that. So the actual audio that I transcribed for the study was not only what you saw on the screen, but also it was long, there was more in depth. There was more that was there. And so it's interesting to see what was kept and what wasn't kept and how that all fit. And then again, to see and hear offenders that weren't even on the video, that very inspiring to say, and just in a different way. So that's kind of how that worked. So I had no part in that. I would have loved, and part of when I started this study was looking at grant opportunities to actually go in and do that. So to take a crew, a videographer in and say, okay, let's set these interviews up, right? Let's do all of this and let's collect this and see really what that was. When my study was just going to be qualitative. Learned that quantitative is necessary to validate qualitative research. And so that changed it a little bit, but that's kind of where that comes from.
And I'll add a point that those interviews are rare. Quite a bit of paperwork, quite a few permissions that had to be obtained for that. Usually because of confidentiality, the faces are blocked out and the voices are somewhat muffled.
But we do have permissions.
We do.
Oh, yes.
We do.
I
We
thought
do.
that question line, I already emailed them like 2 days ago and said, where are they?
Yes.
Bring them with you.
Yes.
It's all for me.
Yes, ma'am.
Better picture of your procedure in collecting your quantitative data. So you mentioned three tests, those tests at the same time. So is that all 58 questions each time?
Broken up into two sections. So there was the pre-test was on one side of the page, there was a definitive line, and then there was the post-test. So it was like you had to look at.
Okay. What happens in between the test and the post? I mean, because normally you do a pre-test and then to see whether it made a difference, and then you did. What happened in between?
So it was given at the same time.
Exactly the same time.
Exactly the same
How
time.
was the post-test? Help me with that work.
So it was, what the question was asking them was, look back on your experience and how you felt in the beginning and how you feel today. Pre and post are used very loosely, right? And so I think that's where when I talked about actually creating an actual pre-test section and a post-test section and then delivering them like they should be delivered in that specific environment.
Question is about, when we're talking about whether to reject, my experience typically is questions in a subsection of the score,
Mhm.
and then based on that score, you did t-test for every item.
Yes, ma'am.
Doing it that way.
I did t-test, Wilcoxon, and effect size for every question because I really wanted to validate what it was that was there.
The reason that we usually ask multiple questions about the same construct is because a single question can really get at the answer.
Mhm.
Only 5 questions that collectively are the construct and usually report liabilities based on the
Yes.
the item. So
Yes.
do you feel like there's a possibility you ended up because a couple of questions didn't have significance? Posit, what is your sense that you would have gotten better sense of an effect, an overall effect, and
Mhm.
if you use subscale composites, or then item by item would have been harder to get if you weren't just going, okay, more than half my questions work, so it's okay,
Right.
or some of them didn't.
Like to say, and again, I'm that bias piece, right? Because it's like I want to say yes. I would ending in my hope. I'm going to use that word because there's that bias right creeping in. I would like to say, based on the information that I collected, had I done and just used the subsections as here's what the subsection says, and looked at it that way instead of question by question, that I would have seen the same thing. I feel like the question by question was strong enough to say yes like that. Honestly, if I was able to do that again, I don't know that I would go question by question again. I feel like it would be consuming, and I would probably be able to better if I just looked at the subsections, especially on the mindset piece, because they were so varying in the type of questions they were asking to delineate what specific part of mindset they were looking for. So, yes, Dr. Alex.
So question on the participants. So did everybody in the writer program participate in these educational courses, or was it just a certain population within that facility?
That's great. So what I've been told is that it is that they participate. However, if they choose not to participate, they can. There is some sort of a consequence that kind of comes with that, but that is kind of their choice. So the people that were able to be there, especially at the second facility, so facility B, where there was that overwhelming male population that came in, they were coming out of I want to say they were coming out of the woodwork. I literally had to actually create more surveys because they didn't have enough, because they just kept coming like, oh yeah, survey, let's take a survey. Yeah, let's take a survey, right? And I just kind of was like, oh my gosh, okay, awesome. Whereas in the first facility, with the female facility, I almost had to beg. I felt like I almost had to beg for them to want to participate, and there was almost more resistance when I was there. And I'm not sure if it was just for what that reason was, but again, like I said, it's not necessarily something they have to do. They're supposed to do it, but again, they can add to sentences. Like there's all kinds of things that can happen to that.
Yes, typically writers pretty much have to attend a combination of education and program. Otherwise, they take the chance before the judge says,
you didn't do it.
Yeah, you haven't really improved yourself there.
You want to go to prison.
Yeah, so there's a really strong incentive for especially the male writers. With female couldn't really say why they were reluctant.
Yeah.
On that.
I felt the same way. They were like, it's interesting. They kept saying it was interesting that I was getting some pushback.
I think that the kind of that self-selecting population, do you think that impacted the outcome of the surveys? Sounds good. Some chose not to participate, so.
I would have to say yes, only because they were there because they wanted to be there, and then they came and took the survey because they wanted to take the survey, right? It's different than a regular education classroom where, for example, I would have all of you, I'm gonna pass a survey out to everybody, you could be having a bad day that day. And so your results on that are gonna be different than if we came in, I gave you a cookie and some orange juice and a $5 bill, right? Or, you know, something like that. So I feel like, again, it has to be, because everybody that took the survey wanted to take the survey, except that one gentleman who brought it back to me and filled the whole thing out. And then, I mean, it was very interesting. He just hands it to me and he pulls it back and he scratches on it and he hands it to me. And I said, thank you very much. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I have a question. Well, actually, I have 3 questions. Why so technical? You mentioned that there's something like $100 million would be saved from citizens.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of curious, so that is based on that. I'm curious, is there any data that supports the earning side of that? Jobs.
Yes.
We discovered that number. Because that seems like, okay, we've discussed the savings side.
Mhm.
So it's going to save the government.
Mhm.
It's kind of with the whole GDP thing.
Wholeheartedly. Yes. So in all, there's not necessarily a wellspring of data. What is out there, they talk about these longitudinal studies. And in there, they're talking about anywhere between $15,000 and $20,000 a year more that they have the potential to make coming out with a GED or their high school diploma, right? Or some sort of education coming back out. Because at that point, it's not like it was, offend anyone in the room. It's not like it was a number of years ago where you didn't necessarily need a high school diploma to get a well-paying job out in the workforce and find something, and you could provide for your family. Today, that's a crucial piece. Yeah, it's kind of a bar that if you don't have, you really do limit your potential, your potential income, as well. Opens the door to that concept of higher education. And at that point, they have the potential to go on and do even more. And it opens the door to programs like the Last Mile, what they're doing in San Quentin, where they're actually teaching offenders how to code and program. And then they're doing internships with Silicon Valley companies while they're incarcerated. And they're getting all that experience and knowledge, and they're having this, they can put that on resumes that, hey, I debugged code for Apple. I debugged code for so-and-so, right? I did this, I did this, I did this. And so now we're coming out of a correctional facility with national certifications in programming languages and real-world experiences. They can walk into $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year jobs if they so found them and were hired. That changes everything. Right now, you're not only changing a person, you're changing a family. You're changing this understanding of generational, if you will, right? Because research talks about if my father or my family had the ability, was incarcerated, my likelihood of being incarcerated is, I think it's like 60 or 70% higher than any other person. And if you're a sibling, and there's a sibling, it actually goes up even more. So it really speaks to that. So is that hidden kind of gem that's in there of, they talk about, one of the offenders in one of the interviews talked about he's doing this not for himself, but for his family, for his fiance and for the people that his mom and his grandma who are supporting him, and all of these things. And that's definitely a factor that's there.
Yeah.
So you mentioned technology and the generals. So let's just consider that the computer, as you mentioned, is simply a tool.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just kind of curious, as you've gone through this process, you and I've had some of these conversations.
Yes, sir.
I'm just curious to see where you are now. Okay. Tools, apps, technology, all the things that can be plugged into this tool. How are you seeing, as you vision cast out,
Yeah.
in the next 5 years?
That's a great question. I honestly will tell it to you like this. I think technology is a vehicle. I think your computer is a vehicle. And what you put in that vehicle and the people you put in that vehicle have the ability to go one of different directions. Load that car up with all kinds of things that aren't going to do anybody any good. And you're going to see it broken down on the side of the road at some point in time because they didn't know how to take care of it. They didn't know what gas to put in, right? They didn't have all these things. You take that same vehicle, you put the right tools in there with the right training, the right people, the right motivation, and that thing can go and go and go and go and take people from point A to point R, all the way down the road. So I think technology into that type of a setting, into that type of correctional setting, has the ability, when it's done with purpose, when it's done with some planning and forethought and really a framework of this is why we're doing it, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're looking for, this is how we're going to retrofit and go back and look at all these different components and pieces. When you have all those together, now we have the ability to really start to affect massive change on a much larger scale. Because honestly, folks, this is not, Idaho is kind of a gem, right? And gem state, right? That was a poor joke. Anomaly in the correctional education world because most places aren't even thinking about this. There's so many states that look at prison and they're like, they did wrong. No, they don't get, it's a luxury. The fact that they get a bed to sleep on, happy that it's not the floor, right? And they're almost, it's more of they need to be dehumanized, and by dehumanizing them, we're going to actually rehabilitate them, which I feel like is the most to make ever. But I feel like that's kind of where that school of thought is. It's very much, if you look back at those models, right, it's very much a Pennsylvania model, separated all the time, where you have people who are looking at it going, no, these are people that need help, and we need to provide that for them. And with the world as it is today, right, my computer, my connectivity, the way that we are, it isn't changing. And so these people who are in these facilities, like Marianne had said, 20, 30 years, they have no idea some of the stuff that they're going to walk out into. And we are doing a huge disservice to those people, that population, by not helping them, not educating them, not helping them to have those 21st century skills. We throw that word around a lot, or that concept around a lot, for today. So I feel like answered your question maybe, but in this.
You're talking about exposure to technology, some kind of curious about the tools you've seen.
Oh, okay, yes.
Think of it in terms of what we got.
Yes.
In place and working. Are you saying there's other platforms that we can adapt?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Closed systems. Yeah, we could take, so for example, we could take our learning management system that we have here, we could take Canvas. We could adapt it for a completely offline environment, drop it into the server at the correctional facility. We could export all of our classes. Offenders could take a class for a specific degree, the correctional facility. The correspondence could be via email, or it could be a very closed system where that server only turns on at 3 o'clock in the morning when nobody's on. All that information is uploaded right back to a connector or a cloud or some apparatus that connects it back to NNU. Information is graded, feedback is given, it's passed back. You can actually have a complete correspondence course-esque type thing given these platforms. And they're in a completely closed environment. Almost no internet connectivity. And with the technology we have, we can monitor that, right? I could have a unit here, 30 units over there. They're not connected to the internet, this one is. With technology that we have today. And then some.
Could I throw in a bit of history?
Sure, please.
Here, I've been in corrections for about 20 years. And what Jesse is describing would be nirvana for us. That when I was in correctional education administration, for something that Jesse is describing, a dedicated server, and Department of Labor has been working with us to do exactly that, that we would have access to their website. And that was first brought up probably 10, 15 years ago. We're just now doing it at some of the facilities on pilot cases. Thanks to an offender in Oregon who managed to get out and victim, that set us behind at least 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's the rub, right? It's how do you make it secure? So where data can still be transmitted, but people are still safe.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, they are still offenders, right? And you can't bifurcate that in order to do one, right? You can't limit that. You have to acknowledge it, and you have to work within that to make it work. But you can.
I think that's unfortunate for these graduates. Those examples right there.
Right? You're one-offs.
Right.
Yep.
Perfect. Any other questions? Perfect. So the committee is going to actually remove themselves from this room, give you guys the opportunity to visit, and looks like there's treats from Jesse and Jesse's family. And
there's
Jesse,
a smorgasbord over there.
do not
You can
go
take my
far.
wife.
Jesse will be calling you in probably pretty shortly. So
Awesome.
thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Through your 20s. I hope they don't break on time.
You know, I look back, and Dr. Curtis is like,
Wrap it up.
I'll try to do this.
And we'll talk sometime.
Yes.
The next study.
Oh, I'm dropping
Let's do it. I would love to. I would love to.
All right.
Yeah, it was cool. Good to see a bunch of that, so. They wanted to sound.
My hope is
Well, if you need, obviously have all the footage of all the stuff, if you need some of that. I hope. Yeah, awesome to see. First dissertation. Yeah, good job, though.
it was nice to meet you.
Maybe.
You too.
No. That's all I need to see.
And you read it.
I know. It was really, really.
Yeah, we'll have that too, yeah, for sure. Did you make any changes?
Greg has to get one over.
So yeah, drop. Oh no, that's
Oh, what the hell? Okay.
You like her?
Yeah.
So one paper, that's it, that's it, I can do this.
All right. All right, so I'll see you. Okay, girls. Yeah.
Okay, that'll be the next one.
We'll be back tomorrow, okay? Over here. Seriously. Hi. Oh my gosh, it's been so long.
So.
Family effort. You made it. I don't know sometimes. You made it. Oh, no.
But. What they want to accomplish, how many chances there are where you're going to kind of how. And that's almost. Yeah. I think in the end,
It doesn't, yeah, they don't make
I just think that that's not like.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yes.
Hey,
Do
you have a little anxiety or not sleep at night or? So like anxious like that. Like the excitement.
Yes.
Great.
No, I just wanted to. Jesse surprised us if we could bring back the ball out. Who's it?
I should just see you play. Because you're a lot of talk, so I wish you could see you play. It's a good play.
I do.
Love it.
Like, you know, on a weekly basis.
Yeah, you too.
All right, I'll see you.
Yeah, please do. Thanks for your help today.
Right.
So I see his house.
Yeah.
I'll be my only one I ever see, so I don't really know. And I'm kind of biased, so.
Right.
Yeah, what's that?
Back change, just like skills. You miss it? Yeah.
I won. I won.
The concept that was going on. No winner, no loser. Everybody gets a trophy. What do you teach them as a kid? No? So I can understand it when you're playing soccer and like four, maybe you roller charities, you know. But they started dancing from there. They need to have a young age. Yeah, but I mean, at some point, you're out here 12. Yeah. Yeah, it's all about winning boys 40 hours. We still go to baseball. It's a different. Last 12 years.
I didn't see it like that. Sucks.
Yeah, Aaron,
Well, obviously, I do, I got a certain amount of classes, right? Got versus our team one. Yeah, like programs.
That's good. Yeah, I didn't win. I'm not playing. Very young.
Sure.
There's no
Yeah, well, if you can. Okay.
No.
Fourth year now.
Yes.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
No, he's improved pretty good and all that. So he keeps score. Yeah. He knows when they win and they do. That's right.
It's probably not there.
I coach a kid here, like, here's all they know. Oh, yeah. First question they ask.
Oh. Okay. I thought you were my daughter. No, when she walked out of the room. When she walked out of the room.
Did he pass?
We will wait.
Oh.
Is that the?
You have to wait.
Can we have our son-in-law back?
Right? I always tell families, congratulations on everybody's part. It is
I kind of look at it from the standpoint of the futures, you know, the price of coffee is gonna go down drastically now, that he's not drinking it all night long. Right. The stock prices are gonna take a drop. Yeah, Trump's not gonna have nothing to do with
Right.
it based on Jesse's coffee consumption.
Well, I never knew what was worse, Jesse sending me stuff at 2:41 in the morning, or me answering it at like
Right.
2:45 in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. That last week I was waiting for those to come in, and I'm like, Jesse, you got another hour. Come on.
There were so many times where I saw the other side of 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, you know, there really is an ungodly hour. I do.
I'm angry right now.
Oh, and my wife loves these, because I would then try to like set my alarm to go to the gym, because I was like, yeah, I can live on like an hour of sleep. It's gonna be awesome.
Oh, our videos ended.
Don't ever do that. That is like the worst. The phrase over the last 22 months. Yes, dear, you are right. I learned it because there'll be so many times like, you're not gonna get up. Don't set your alarm. If you do, I will murder you in your sleep. Okay, got it. Not a problem.
I couldn't help but being used as the metaphor of birth
You and Ryan
Works a
got
little
one.
bit better than you think though, because as we all know, a birth is a beginning and not an end.
Right. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So here you go.
Here we go. Yes, sir.
Well, you said to me one day, oh, this is kind of the climax. What am I gonna do after this? I think you've got plenty.
How are you?
Good to see you.
Oh, I don't know what I'm gonna do after this.
Good,
And then you
we haven't
actually
seen him
like,
since
you like
last
sit down and
Sunday,
think
so-
about it. Oh, no, there's a lot to do.
Yeah, so
man,
I flew, well, I was here last week and then.
So, no, and it is, it's
flew out,
that,
one of my students was
it's,
sitting in Seattle,
it's
so
that,
I
I have all
with
this
them and
here.
then flew back and, so yeah, I'm
What
here
what
till
can you
next
not
Monday.
do?
Oh, are ya?
What else can you do?
Yeah.
And I
was
think
gonna
too
be in your neck of the woods.
One of the things I love about my cohort is that we,
It's
there's a lot of very similar studies.
Oh,
So our
darn it.
conversations have been
So
more-
I ended up getting, or was it?
Darn it.
Yeah, I know, I was.
We could have quite a Vegas study if we
It's good
could
to see
find.
you.
Good to see you. Things are going good?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm behind on grades. Just 3 more. Yeah, every time I see a student, I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't figured that yet. I've never,
How do you
we've just
implement?
been sprout.
Well, and
That's,
that's,
I see that, I think, like, pretty crazy.
so crazy, so Tom, so this is
Well,
this
this
is totally not,
Heidi and
it's
I,
not anything
that
else.
you,
So I vicariously became the president of
Heidi
the
and I
Idaho
both did
Lifelong
them.
Learning
We always
Association.
advocate for yourself.
Totally awesome, right? So Mary Ellen knows
We're like, okay,
And next 2 weeks in April,
yeah.
they're having a
Have you
meet at the Capitol session where they want people to go and talk to representatives, senators, legislators, and things like that from our respective places about issues in education or all of this. So I feel like it's so timely that here's my study, here's all this data, right? Here's all of this stuff that I've collected. Opportunity to then possibly go to DC, spend a day to then just sit and talk with people who actually have the ability to really change, not only at a state level, but as on a national level. So just having that, and there's so many studies that are coming out, right, of what we're talking about today.
And then you'd have to know how much you changed lives with what you do. His little daughter got up this morning on his way out the door and said, "Daddy, can I talk to you?" Yeah, he said, "Well, yeah, I mean, he's ready to go. Yeah, oh, I gotta go. Yes, Everly, what do you want to say?" And she goes, "So Daddy, in like this many years, I'm going to be a doctor too."
And it's awesome, because you sit there and you're just like, yes, ma'am. Yes, you are. So it's not just the right impact of, oh, I have this degree, I did this, like I did this. It's such a family thing. It's such a, yeah, it is. Right, so you're at the end, you have to go. Okay.
I'll let him take 10 years off.
That's all you can, that's all you can do. That's all you can do. Well, it was like Dr. Allen came up to me at the end, and she was like, I mean, we're done. You're not my bitch, right?
Yeah.
She's like, I want to sit down and talk to you about a study that we can do. And I was like, done. Like, so that for me is such an amazing thing, right? Because you have these people who are who are like, hey, can we talk about
Actually, worried honestly that it's going to stop, so.
The important people back, it looks like.
You're good, oh my gosh.
Oh, and they're all there. Jesse, do you want to come up here?
Yeah, yeah.
We're officially off Facebook Live. That was the thing that I think was stressing me out.
Oh, hold on.
No,
Let
I
me
called
mix.
him last night. I was like, I'm not about this Facebook Live thing.